Rick Riordan. So, I've wanted to make a video about Rick Riordan for a while, and with the new Trials of Apollo book just coming out, I'm really hyped about it. So, I wanted to talk about why I like his books, or at least some of the things that impress me about them and keep me consistently excited about them. Rick Riordan, if you don't know, is the author of the wildly popular Percy Jackson series, and today I want to talk about his books, especially how his representation of minorities has improved over time. So, a few quick things. First, I'm not going to talk about all of Rick Riordan's work, especially his ancillary and tie-in material, like the Demigod Files or all the crossover stories, mostly because I haven't read all of them. And second, spoilers. Just big old spoilers for basically everything. I'm not going to go into the big plot points much, but I will be talking about some of the characters in depth. I'm going to move through his oeuvre in roughly chronological order, so you are warned. Lastly, this video hinges on the premise that well done, well executed, fully fledged representations of minority characters in children and young adult media is good and important. I'm not really going to argue this point, it is the assumption we are beginning with. Diverse media with diverse characters is good and important. And this point is, weirdly, kind of controversial. In fact, in the vast majority of children and young adult media, most of the cast will be white, straight, cis, able-bodied, neurotypical children or young adults with unstated or vague religious affiliation. That last bit about the unstated or vague religious affiliation is one we don't often think about, but really, having a character with any stated religion is really rare. Most will maybe practice a sort of secularized Christmas, maybe, but that's about it. The rationale you'll hear for this is that this makes the books more accessible and thus marketable. I would counter that if you really want your book to appeal to as many different people as possible, wouldn't you want to have as many different types of characters as possible? But that comes with the assumption that outright bigots wouldn't refuse a book because one of the secondary characters is in a wheelchair, I guess. So yeah, most children's lit and young adult lit will be white, straight, cis, able-bodied, neurotypical children or young adults with unstated or vague religious affiliation, even if it gets absurdly, massively popular. Popular enough to take risks and work outside the box. I'm looking at you, J.K. Rowling. Looking at you. This fact, this lack of diversity, does not bother some people, and we are not going to argue this point in this video. We are beginning with the assertion that this situation is not ideal, and that added quality, well-written diversity is a positive, and we are going to look specifically at how Rick Riordan improves in this specific aspect of his writing over time. Uncle Rick is a San Antonio, Texas native, and as someone who was also born and raised in Central Texas, I love this fact. He went to my alma mater, UT, and became a middle school teacher. We're basically the same person. Now, Percy Jackson isn't actually his first book series. In the 90s, he wrote a detective series set in San Antonio called Big Red Tequila. There's like 7 books in this series, and I have read none of them. I'm sure they're great, though. How could they not be with a name like that? Our story really begins in 2004-ish. The story goes that he was telling his son Greek myths as bedtime stories, and when he ran out of myths, or at least child-friendly myths, I assume, he started to make one up. He invented a story about a boy named Percy, a son of Poseidon, who goes on an adventure to return Zeus's missing lightning bolts. His son told him that he should turn it into a book. His dad had published books before, after all. So Rick did just that. He then took his rough draft to his middle school students and used their feedback to revise. He then sold this book to Miramax Books for enough money to retire from teaching and focus on writing. Goddamn, Rick was living the dream here. Life goals. So yeah, if you've never read the first Percy Jackson books, they are fine. They're okay. Good even. Definitely like children's books. But if you like bad puns and Greek myths, they're fun. I read all 5 in like one weekend when I was in high school. Personally, I think the books really pick up in the 3rd one, Titan's Curse, mostly because we meet my favorite character, Nico. There's also some good world building in that book, and it really feels like Rick had figured out how he wanted to end the series by that point, so the plot feels more focused. Maybe that's just me. So, remember how I said that children's lit will tend to be filled with white, straight, cis, able-bodied, neurotypical children with unstated or vague religious affiliation? Well, Percy Jackson and all of his friends are mostly white, straight, cis, able-bodied children with an unstated or vague religious affiliation who have ADHD and dyslexia. Because Rick Riordan's son has ADHD and dyslexia, and Rick wanted these heroes to be like him. So yeah, the diversity isn't amazing here, but the intent to provide representation for minority children was present from the very beginning. And ADHD and dyslexia are like superpowers here. Proof the children are demigods. They're side effects of their brains and bodies being ready for amazing quests. And there's this great diversity in the characters with ADHD and dyslexia and how it impacts them. Annabeth is depicted as super smart and studious. You have Percy, who's always struggled in school, and so on. Now, how you feel about this representation of ADHD and dyslexia will vary. Some people really like it. Others think it isn't very well done or plays into some iffy tropes. I think we can safely say that the intent was very positive, but your mileage may vary on the execution. There's also a movie adaptation of the first 2 books, which are bad. Logan Lerman was 18 when he played Percy, who should be like 12, and they made Hades the bad guy, and like Persephone is in the underworld in summer, which, like, okay, they made Grover black, which was a cool choice in an attempt to address the lack of racial diversity, it seems, but still, these movies are not good. Maybe if you haven't read the books, you'll like them. I don't like them. I didn't even watch the second one, honestly. Alright, so we will look at the rest of Rick Riordan's books in part 2 of this video. I wanted to cut it here to keep it from getting super long. So I will see you guys over on part 2 to finish up.